Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you today. My name's Dustin Cormier, and welcome to How to Rock Astrology. Today, continuing in our series, this will be our last word before we start getting into Saturn transiting the houses. This is coming from Astrology, Karma, and Transformation by Stephen Arroyo. We're continuing our series talking about Saturn, particularly now. We're at the heart of this book, and indeed the heart of transformation is Saturn's transits in the natal chart. We just talked about Saturn return, and in our last video we actually talked about Sati Sati, which is its own Vedic technique that is hugely relevant to everybody. It's when the Saturn transits your natal moon position. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about Saturn's general transit of planets outside of its own, which is like the Saturn return. So it's like when Saturn transits, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and even the outer planets. Although it's more... this is just a general look at Saturn's aspects in transit, kind of taking on after the last bit from our first Saturn transits video. So Stephen Arroyo continues on the subject of Saturn's transits of any planet. Since the quality of energy release is similar in all Saturn transits, no matter which natal planet may be involved, and since all Saturnian transits are experienced as a personal reaction in some dimension of the individual's life, shown by the natal planet involved, to the basic principles and lessons of Saturn, I feel it is sufficient here simply to outline some key phrases and concepts that I have found to be useful in understanding these transits, rather than treating each transit separately. As I've tried to make clear earlier in this chapter, the conjunctions, squares, and oppositions of transiting Saturn, indeed of any transiting planet, are the most important aspects to be aware of. And it can also be said that the transits of Saturn to the personal planets, to the ascendant, or to its own natal position are almost always noticed by the individual in some obvious way, some direct, clear correlate in reality. Whereas the Saturn transits to Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are only sometimes easily correlated with experiences or feelings of which the person may be immediately aware. I'd say this is more to do with the importance of the planet in your chart. The Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto could always, no matter what, it might be subtle. Some people it's not, but generally it probably is. But for Jupiter's sake, as well as any of the personal planets, Saturn will be much louder if that planet represents something intrinsically important to the chart. For example, if it's the ascendant lord. Let's say I'm a Leo rising. So Saturn's transit to the Sun will always be important for everybody, but it would be particularly important for me. Here's a better example. Let's say if you're a Sagittarius rising, then Saturn's transit to Jupiter represents not only a transit of constriction towards your personal faith and optimism and outlook in life, but it's your first lord. So it's going to be huge, and you're going to feel it very deeply. Even Saturn transiting your 10th lord, whatever sign, wherever your MC is, your midheaven is, that cusp is whatever sign that cusp is in. The planet which rules that sign is a deeply important planet. And Saturn transiting that will have huge ramifications for how you deal with your career and your constant life activity. So these are just examples of different things that can have importance, for more importance for a Saturn transit experience. And the point being here is that usually if Saturn is in transit to your 10th lord, the house that holds the planet that holds the 10th house cusp, or your first lord, the planet that rules the sign that your ascendant sign is in. When Saturn touches these important planets, it will be immediately directly felt in a way that you can see it, no matter what. So, I've personally absorbed some, Stephen Arroyo continues, I have personally observed some extremely important experiences to take place when Saturn was transiting an exact or almost exact within 10 degrees aspect to Jupiter. To Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. But it is also the usual case that the deeper meaning of anything that may happen during these transits is not fully apparent for a number of months or even years. Especially with those outer planets and the spiritual things that happen when Saturn makes a transit to an outer planet, the Trans-Saturnian planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So the following basic principles may be applied to any transit of Saturn. The key concept simply has to be related to the dimension of life experience represented by the planet being activated by Saturn. So, these are the following basic principles of Saturn's transits. A. Saturn always slows down the usual rhythm of nature in the area indicated. But by slowing things down and making one feel at times like, when will this ever end? Saturn concentrates our experience, makes us live in the present, and it helps us to focus our energy and to concentrate and conserve it. Live in the present helps to focus our energy, to concentrate and conserve it, so that we aren't so exasperated by it. It's almost like, when Saturn transits Mars, it's like we don't feel like we have enough energy, and then when something forces us to use our energy, we're obliterated and embarrassed by the fact that we don't have the energy to do that thing. And there's pressure from other people to do this martial thing, whether it's sexually. This could be probably a huge thing for a lot of people. Saturn passes by your Mars, and all of a sudden you have to deal with the reality of your instinct and your neurological connection to your musculature and to your ability to summon willpower to express your muscles. Sexually, as well as to be a contender sexually amongst other people. Saturn transiting Mars can make you very embarrassed about how little you contend sexually amongst other competitors, which might be a difficult reality to deal with, but not everybody has to deal with that reality. Different people fall in love in different ways, but if sexual interplay is an important part of your relationship, then you're going to have to deal with it when Saturn comes through your Mars. What this part is saying, principle A, is that there will be a scatterment, and this slowing things down is what helps us focus our energy and to concentrate and to conserve, so that we're not just leaking energy, Mars energy in that case, in ways that are not useful to the real use of Mars energy that you want to express. Principle B, in relation to Saturn's transits. Saturn transits deepen and focus one's attention and awareness, while at the same time making one more detached and objective. For example, Saturn aspecting Venus shows that you can become more detached and objective in your attitude towards love, but also that you can, during this time, develop a deeper ability to give and receive love, because you are more focused in the here and now, and more aware of exactly what you are doing, whom you're sharing love with, and what it means to you. Detached and objective being the key point there. At the same time that Saturn transits deepen and focus awareness and intention, At the same time, it makes one more detached and objective and aloof, for good or bad reasons, usually for good. I'm just noticing Miss Blissful is watching with us now. Thanks for contributing to the comments, Miss Blissful. Principle C with Saturn's aspects. Saturn transits often feel like the hand of destiny is reaching into your life in the area indicated, making things happen and forcing you to face your fears in that area. Facing these things may be difficult and may seem quite harsh at times, but it's a necessary step in realization if you are to build a more secure and realistic approach to experience in that area, especially if there's an important planet in that area. The houses kind of act as the vessels for the planets in a strong way. So if Saturn is transiting your 6th house and you have the moon there, well, the moon we've been given as the Sati examples, but let's say Mercury is in the 6th house and Saturn is transiting Mercury, then the harshness, and you have to face your fears in the area of the 6th house, and organizing things and being punctual and prudent, which is where your Mercury is. So by working on 6th house things, on your physical health, and on things related to Virgo and reliability and skills, and holding yourself accountable for appointments you make with other people, these are all 6th house things. As Saturn is transiting your 6th, by dealing with those themes, it necessarily must deal with your Mercury, because your Mercury is also in that 6th house and also extends itself through that 6th house energy field. Now, Principle D of Saturn's transits. Saturn transits often reveal to the individual what must be done if one is to live with full integrity and in accord with the responsibilities felt towards one's own self. Cool. Yeah, that's a good one. I guess I'm just going to keep going. Principle E. Saturn transits pressure an individual to make the indicated dimension of experience more definite and concrete. And this more realistic approach to that area of life is usually prompted by one of two methods of testing one's attitudes and priorities in that field of experience. Either the person feels that he is being tested by circumstances to see if they measure up to certain standards, or the individual feels an inner urge to examine that area of life to see if it meets their newfound values and personal requirements. This testing may be experienced as limitation or frustration, depending on the individual's scope of awareness, as the person learns that he can't have everything. But such pressure can prompt the growth of self-reliance and inner strength in the area indicated. Very useful. Very beautifully put. Got two more principles here. Principle F of Saturn's transits. Saturn transits can help you to build up your confidence in the area indicated, based on the realization of what your real capabilities are and upon what you have earned through effort. Once you know your capabilities more realistically, you can proceed to take more responsibility for your own life. Once you know your capabilities, you can proceed to make more responsibility for your own life. Very good. And finally, Principle G, to wrap up the Saturn's transits to the planets. Principle G of Saturn's transits. Saturn transits tend to moderate whatever is excessive in one's life, whether excessive pride in some area of life excessive activity, excessive attachment, excessive dependency, or even excessive, i.e., unfounded, faith. Generally meaning Jupiter, or even internal faith in other people, these sorts of things. These are all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 given principles from Stephen Arroyo about the general nature of Saturn's transits to planets. Including itself, basically, but what it means to those planets that it's transiting. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Now we have another huge, it's going to be huge, it's going to be great, as Donald Trump would say. The next big part of our discussion is going to be talking about Saturn through the houses. And this is really the key reading of this whole book. Maybe not this whole book, but this part of this series. And indeed, this next coming part is kind of the heart of this whole reading. It's going to be Saturn through the houses, because the houses are really the ground upon which all the planetary placements, the transits to planets, the house is the seed, the field, the ground through which Saturn's transits employs its pressure on the very ground upon which any planet in that house stands. And in general, it shows our development of ourselves, of our life, in our whole beingness and consciousness, because all of the houses make up the full totality of the experiences that we are and that we have as our rising sign. It goes to show you how deeply the rising sign expresses something of the soul. So this is why there's a huge emphasis given in this book to Saturn going through the houses. First, we're going to talk a little bit about it, and then we're going to talk about Saturn going through the individual houses. But first, I am going to decompress. I've been doing this since about like 4 o'clock. It's getting to be about 9 o'clock now. For those watching live, feel free to join me again in about, I'd say about an hour. I'm going to shoot for 10 o'clock, folks. I'm going to do a bit of yoga. I'm going to eat. I'm going to water my plants in my garden. And then I'm going to try to come back here for about 10 o'clock for those of you who are watching live. So I hope you guys have been enjoying this series so far. Stay tuned. In the next part of this series, we're going to talk about Saturn transiting through the houses.